Many of you may have seen my videos, and you notice in my videos I have that title, which we'll show right here. And that title also, if you see, there's a series of foreign words in there. Segundo elo canção nova. That means I am part of the segundo elo, the second level, in a sense. Maybe you could call it like being an oblate of what is known as the Canção Nova community, which is based in Cachoeira Paulista, Brazil. It has mission houses all over South America and parts of Europe and the Middle East. However, it is a fully Catholic community that runs its own international media organization, which includes television, AM/FM radio, publishing of books, e-books, CDs, DVDs, etc. And just like every other Catholic media operation, say for example EWTN, if EWTN is looking for some kind of material, you might get a phone call and say Irondale, Alabama is looking for a video on this. Well, in my case, it's Cachoeira Paulista is looking for a video on this. And one of the questions they asked is, are there any English language videos that talk about the charismatic gifts? I referred them to a website called The Wild Goose is Loose, and also a great video that explains the gift of tongues, and I refer that video to you. It is in the comments below, or actually in the description below, and I also show you here on the website, on here, where to find that website. Strongly encouraged you to check out that video either before or after this one. Now we go to the purpose for these videos, and this is a series of videos that's going to talk about the charismatic gifts from a Catholic perspective, because that's something that's really important. A lot of Catholics believe that the charismatic renewal is a Protestant thing, and therefore the Catholics should have nothing to do with it. However, that's a false teaching. It is true that many seminaries and many bishops and priests, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, reject the charismatic renewal, but that doesn't mean that it is not a Catholic thing, and I'll explain to you why. Every Catholic teaching in the Catholic Church is rooted in Scripture. Therefore, if something is in Scripture, the Catholic Church, which roots its teachings in Scripture, can't turn around and say, A, this teaching is not scriptural, but it applies to us, or B, this teaching is scriptural, but it doesn't apply to us. All our teachings are rooted in Scripture. And the charismatic gifts are scriptural. The most famous passage, of course, is 1 Corinthians 12, which lists not only all the charismatic gifts, but the proper use of them, which is one of the key elements that are really important that we need to understand within the Catholic Church. The Catholic part of the charismatic gifts is the proper use of them, put it that way. They're also described generally in places like Acts of the Apostles. You'll also see precursors to them in the Old Testament in places like Isaiah. So the charismatic gifts are very real. And we also know for the first 300 years of the church, roughly, the charismatic gifts were a normal part of Christianity, which of course was all Catholicism. So the charismatic gifts were an important part of Catholic life in the first 3 centuries. There came a point where they started to fade away, and even some saints have been known to have said that they were no longer necessary. However, the words charismatic gifts are no longer necessary is not scriptural. They may have no longer been necessary for that time, but are they necessary? Well, the fact that they're coming back and have been coming back for 50 years now is a sign that A, they are necessary, but more importantly, they were necessary in the first 300 years of the church because the church was surrounded with pagan culture. Now they're coming back, and this time when the church is surrounded by pagan culture. So you can see it's not that there is a time where they're no longer necessary, they return when necessary. Further, you will clearly see that many of the saints throughout the history of the church, even though they may not have used these terms, were clearly endowed with charismatic gifts that clearly endowed. You can see that very clearly in the lives of the saints. Obviously, they would not say, well, these are the charismatic gifts, because they wouldn't necessarily use that terminology. But it's clear. You know, many of the saints knew the word of knowledge. They had prophecy. They had all these different aspects that they didn't call charisms or charismatic gifts, but they were part of their spirituality. So we see those things are all very real. So the charismatic gifts are very real, and they're very Catholic. So if someone turns around and says it's a Protestant thing, there's a history behind that, and that history has to do with the fact that much of the leadership of the Catholic Church did not take leadership within the charismatic renewal, but it is not a Protestant thing. It is just as Catholic as anything else we do within the Catholic Church. What is the Catholic element that makes it more Catholic is the aspect of how they are used. A term that is extremely important in the charismatic renewal, the term is discernment. We're going to talk about our next question in our next video, but I hope that was a good introduction for you, and we will talk more about specifically the gift of tongues and in this case, the charismatic gifts. God bless you.